recruiting tasks as well. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Hannah.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Anna. I'm Zahir. I'm an intern this summer with SB Energy. My background is in electrical engineering, and I'm currently in grad school for my master's in analytics at SBE, which is an IPP. I'm currently working with the innovations team where we are testing out new technologies to help with the renewable energy transition and how we can take advantage of all sorts of renewable resources.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Garza. I'm sitting just in front of Zahir. So we're at the same office in Denver, Colorado. I'm interning for SB Energy as well, but in the operational excellence department, specifically asset management. So once the projects go commercial or active, we manage the project, verify the operations run smooth and in compliance with the contract obligations. So the renewable space, I have a trajectory in the renewable space for 7 years now, and every day we're learning something new. So excited to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Atharva. I am also an intern at SBE in the Denver, Colorado office, and I work with the grid integration team. So we are responsible to finding the best location for interconnection of our projects to the grid, as well as signing interconnection agreements with the ISOs and RTOs in the region. I'm currently a graduate student at NYU studying power systems engineering.
Thank you, Atarva. So the way I have this set up is that I have a slide with questions that we can ask our industry members, and then there's another slide where we can ask the interns questions, but they're mostly as prompts, and I want to encourage anyone, if someone says sparks a question, that you do not have to specifically follow my prompts. You can ask any original questions of your own as well. But does anyone have any questions before we get started?
Oh, I think we can start.
Okay, thank you, Zahir. So I'll start with Hannah. What does your typical workday look like?
Thanks. So since I am in our operations and administration business unit, I typically just generally give an overview. I typically respond to a lot of emails from staff members who need support with things like their health insurance, communications with their colleagues, tracking their time, all things HR. So that's one area. I also review a lot of applications for our full-time positions that are open. So right now we are hiring for 2 full-time positions. We're hiring for a vice president of regulatory reform, along with a program manager for our Charging Smart program, which is an EV electric vehicle program. So a lot of application review, communicating with candidates, setting up interviews. And then I also do quite a bit of communication with our interns and coordinating our monthly events that we have for them, coordinating with the partners that we have, and also making sure that their managers have everything that they need in order to support them. So yeah, I think that's most of it. And then taking meetings as needed. And those typically vary week to week. An example of a meeting that I just got off of is we are currently hiring for our CEO, who is leaving us in December. So we're working with an executive search firm right now to find a new CEO. They're doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of the recruitment and outreach. And we're down to our last couple of candidates, but having communication with our board members who are a part of that search as well. So while I am in the clean energy industry, I don't really do much of the hands-on work and more of behind the scenes on the admin side.
I feel very similar to that statement, where I am in the renewable energy industry, but I am not in the technical side of things. So I was curious what your background looked like what schooling you did or what degrees you might have.
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is my first position within clean energy. So it's very exciting. As I said, I joined IREC back in November, and prior to that, I didn't have any clean energy experience. So it's really new for me, but it's really great because I'm able to learn so much from my colleagues, especially being in a remote organization. I still feel like I have a good connection with my colleagues. But so I graduated from Manhattan College, which is in Riverdale in New York City. In 2019, I was an urban studies major and minored in sociology and Spanish. My senior year of college, I interned for the New York City Department of Small Business Services. I supported their launch services team to help small businesses launch their businesses. I interned with them for, I think, about a year before I came on full time as a program manager. And once again, I focused on a couple of different projects with supporting small businesses and helping them launch. After that, I left about 2 years after I joined full time. So I was there for about a total of 3 years. And then I actually decided to move into the private sector, and I was working for a startup called Minder, which was a startup focused on building belonging in the world's leading workplaces. I was a program manager there as well, and I managed a mentorship program for a couple of our pretty large clients, pretty large global clients. And I did that also for about 2 years. And I focus a lot of my work on mentorship, but also diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging and accessibility. And I was able to take those learnings into my current position now as an operations manager, working within HR, really trying to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within our organization, but also across the clean energy industry. And that was something that we really focused on in terms of our recruitment for our internship program. So that's kind of how all of that led to where I am today.
Thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
So I had a question. Not exactly any of these, but I had some thoughts or some queries about what IREC does. So I was wondering, so in the energy space, there's IPPs, there's consultancy, there's all different kind of companies. So how does IREC fit in there? So what would you categorize IREC as, since it's like a council? Does it just facilitate the process as a consultant to other businesses, companies, or other energy companies? Or what do you think is the best way to describe what IREC does?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So IREC is a nonprofit. So we're not consultants, we're not private, we're a nonprofit, and we are mainly grant funded, mostly federal grants and mostly by the Department of Energy. However, our funding is a bit varied, but the majority of our funding does come from federal grants. And that means that we work on projects that are funded that way. And depending on the funding that we have, that really like centralizes around the work that we do. And a little bit more of like a background about IREC. So IREC has like 3 core programs. We have our workforce development team, which is focused on connecting businesses to highly trained and diverse clean energy workforce. We also have our regulatory team, which really focuses on working to improve the rules and regulatory policies and technical standards that make clean energy that's more widely accessible. And also to help develop a state-of-the-art electricity grid. And then finally, we have our local initiatives team, which is centralized around helping local governments and regional organizations and community leaders with deploying central clean energy solutions like solar, energy efficiency, and wind. So a lot of the grants that we really go after have to really revolve around our 3 different sectors of work. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does definitely. So what I take from this is that the main goal of IREC is to empower others to achieve sustainability or clean energy.
Yep, yeah, our whole goal is working towards a 100% clean energy future. And if we're able to achieve that, that's great. That also means that IREC is out of business, but that's better for the world. So hopefully we'll get there one day.
And you're based in DC?
So I am based in New York. We are a 100% remote organization. Back in, I think, 2021, we merged with the Solar Foundation, who was based in DC. So we have quite a few staff members who are in DC, but other than that, we're totally spread out. We do have one very small office in Puerto Rico because we do some in-person programming in Puerto Rico since we have a couple of our local initiatives team members based there. But other than that, we are spread out across the country.
Oh, okay, awesome. And would you say some business function of or services of what you do is similar to some other institutes, such as the Edison Electric Institute, or a lot of other firms like that?
I'm not familiar, so I'm not able to comment.
Okay.
But in terms of like my work in general, I think it would probably be pretty similar to other organizations like ours in terms of like HR, recruitment, outreach, managing staff. Yeah, but I can't get into specifics on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hannah, I have another question for you. Thank you for being such a good spirit about our networking. What would you say is the best piece of advice you've had to apply to your career?
That's a great question. And I see that it was on the screen. I feel like I should have thought about that before you asked me. I think that this is a piece of advice, not only for your career, but just generally, that comparison is a thief of joy. You're on your own journey. And you can do like whatever you set out. You can do whatever you set out to do for yourself. And it might be different from one of your best friends or one of like your classmates, and you might be on a totally different trajectory, but what's meant to happen for you is going to happen, and don't compare yourself to others. And then I guess kind of tying into that is really using your like network and your resources that are around you, like your advisors while you're in school, your professors, they are there to help you and to see you succeed. So don't hesitate to reach out to them if you need any kind of support and guidance. People are a lot friendlier and nicer than you may think. And it just doesn't hurt to ask. So those are, I guess, that's more than one piece of advice, but I hope it's helpful to you.
Thank you. I've always heard that saying as well, and I think it's very applicable, especially like in our day of social media where everything we do is pretty public for the most part. So I do think it's important to focus on yourself, your own goals, and your own timeline rather than on others.
Yep.
I had another question, and we can transition to the interns after this unless anyone has some more questions. But I was curious about, said this was your first position in the clean energy industry. And I was curious how your transition into this field was like on like a knowledge base, because I think it is very like wide and there's a lot of technical things to know. And I was curious if you found that like easy or slightly challenging.
Yeah, great question. And I will say that I am still learning, especially since we have a lot of like program managers and directors that work directly like on the projects that we're focused on, and I don't. And so it's an area where I'm constantly trying to improve. You know, HR in general is new to me. Clean energy in general is new to me. So there's a lot of information that I'm trying to absorb. And because I'm not working directly on the projects, it takes a little bit more time and intention to learn about it. So I would say that I kind of like go out of my way to learn more because it's not like directly in front of me every single day. So it's not easy. IREC also just does a lot of work in like different areas within clean energy, whether it's like electric vehicles, solar, more of like the regulatory policy. So really understanding the work that IREC does in general is difficult. But I find it fascinating and it's something that I really enjoy, and taking that time to do that when I do have the time is always worth it. And then for my position in particular, I have the opportunity to connect with like everybody across the organization. So it feels really good to be able to like make connections where I see them, because sometimes you're siloed when you're working on your project. Sometimes you're siloed in those areas and you're not able to really have the time to understand what others are doing across the organization. So me being a centralized person who connects with everyone, it's great to be able to understand what one person's doing, also understanding what somebody else is doing, and finding ways in which they can intersect. So I've learned a lot. There's a lot of more learning that I have to do and that I'm interested in doing. But it's a journey, and I'm grateful for how far I've come and also for where I'm going to be going.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions for Hannah before we switch gears a little bit?
I don't want to take all the time, but I did have one question.
Yeah.
Okay, so typically you mentioned, Hannah, that you are involved with hiring people or bringing in the human resources needed in your company. So given that you're working in the in the energy space or the energy company, so apart from the technical skills or knowledge of the roles, what else do you look for, or what are the top things that you look for while determining who's the best fit for a specific role?
That's a great question. And it really depends on the role that we're hiring for. So I can share a little bit about like the process that we do for hiring and our recruitment. So what I typically do is I connect with my manager to better understand like what the team is looking for with this new. And I do the first draft of a job description and then have the team look over it, make sure that it's good, make sure that they have everything that they're looking for in there. And then we go ahead and post it, keep it open for around 4 weeks or so, and then review the applications. So going back to where I started, it really depends on the skill set that the team is looking for, the like personality of the individual that the team is looking for, and then going from there. Typically I pick out the top areas for like skill requirements that they've listed, and I review every application like personally with my own eyes. I know a lot of like larger organizations have like programs that they use to like scan the applications first and like look at keywords. We don't do that at IREC just because we are still so small. So that's how we kind of do the first pass, and then I narrow it down based off of what the team looks for, and then pass on the last couple of applications to make sure that these are a good first few to bring in for an interview. So yeah, it's really all dependent on the position that we're hiring for. In terms of like just first pass of resumes and cover letters. That's a great question. Thank you.
Yep. And so would you say that, you have to really tailor your application for the role? Like,
I would say that definitely stands out when reviewing the
Mhm.
applications.
Mhm.
Since we're like, I'm looking at the job description and then I'm also looking at your application. And if it aligns well, then you're probably going to move forward. That's just the way that I do things. I can't say for other organizations, but I find that to be really helpful. And you also can tell when somebody is submitting just like a generic application, like a generic resume that they're also sending to like a million other places versus somebody who has really taken the time to look at our job posting and tailor their application to that. And believe me, like when I was first applying to like internship stalls in college and like positions when I was ready to look for a full-time position, I just threw a million of applications out there, just hoping that I would get something back. And I know sometimes that works for some people, which is great. But I will say it makes a really big difference if you do put the time in to tailor the applications to the job posting that you're applying for. And I know it takes a lot of time. It's not easy and it's hard when you don't hear anything back or when you get rejections, but I do think it makes a difference.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
On the thread of hiring, what would you say is like makes someone a strong candidate for a position? Obviously, you look for something different in every position, but if there was anything that like universally makes someone a strong candidate, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, there's always just generally like your skills and your experience, but it's also your drive too. So, like I said, I didn't have clean energy experience coming into my position. I didn't have like general HR experience. I had diversity, equity, and inclusion experience because of my previous employer. But I didn't have like that hands-on experience that they were looking for. But I had the drive and I was willing to learn. And I think that you can really tell, especially when you have the chance to be in front of someone and you have the interview. It's hard to share that over just an application, but once you get in front of someone and you share like your interests and you share that and you can really show that you've done the research on the company, you know what you're talking about, that is huge. And also just having a good positive attitude. People understand that they're hiring you because they're going to be working with you. And if it's somebody that they like and they know that they can work with and somebody who's fairly easy to work with, that's also a really big factor. At least for me, that's something that I look for. I also think like during the interview phase, finding ways that you can kind of relate to your interviewer. I've always heard this. I don't know if it's exactly true, but people like people that are like them. And so finding ways to relate to your interviewer, I think is really important. So you can always go ahead before your interview and look them up on LinkedIn and try to better understand their role, their interests, and ask questions about that and really being engaged. I think that also makes it makes a big difference because they already know your experience that's down on paper. So that and when you get in front of them, that's the time for you to really be able to bring what you have down on paper to life and then add a little bit of, a little bit of spice on the side with your personality.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Hannah? Okay, so I think we're gonna switch gears now that we have gotten to hear about Hannah and Hannah's job. Now, I think it's time for us to get to know the interns a little bit better. So I have a couple questions up here that I'm gonna aim towards you guys more. So I guess I will ask Atarva, um, what is your main responsibilities in your current internship?
So I would say my current responsibilities are like can be split into two major groups. One is providing general support to the team, and the second would be working on independent projects. So when it comes to general support, it's like we do a lot of a land analysis, a lot of energy analysis to understand where all the resources are spread out across the US. So we have to gather that data in a more presentable form because it's spread out across a lot of tools and stuff. So we have to basically extract that data. And so that is a more manual and a more tedious job. So I basically do that and support the team so that they can focus on more important parts. And I do the grunt work basically. And coming to the individual projects that I work on, so currently I'm trying to automate some reports that we get from utilities and ISOs. Again, before this, it was more of a manual effort, which used to take a lot of time and energy. So what I'm trying to do is as soon as the ISO publishes that report, we simply run a Python script and we extract all the relevant data. So, so that is my way of basically eliminating the need of third-party contractors as well as basically developing a tool which is in-house. So in that sense, I'm trying to add value to the company. So I would say these two are my main responsibilities here as an intern.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting and also very essential, especially the extracting all the data and streamlining it. I'm sure that is a huge help for your team. I was curious, and I do want to ask this question of all of you. So feel free to respond, anyone. But I'm curious what made you all inspired to join the renewable energy field.
For me, the main reason was its rapid growth and spread. So when it comes to renewable energy, it encompasses most of important topics that an electrical engineer learns. So joining the renewable energy industry and as well as because it is a growing industry, the opportunities in this industry are more compared to any other division of electrical engineering. So yeah, that is my motivation behind joining renewable industry.
I would add on that to Tarva's point. I have similar incentives on why I joined this magnificent industry. So I have a background as a corporate lawyer, and this industry is constantly changing with technology regulation. So one of my key roles was to integrate new technologies into the grid. So also the necessity to transition into cleaner sources of energy is vital, and not only for the climate change prevention efforts, but also to improve the standard of living and improve reliability throughout the grid's performance.
For me, I would say, yeah, okay. So for me, I would say, so yeah, my background is electrical engineering from college. But afterwards, I did work in the industry for a couple of years, and I found it to be really uh, kind of stale, I would say. Not a lot of growth. So eventually, I kind of moved on towards the software industry, and eventually, my current grad school program in analytics, which actually brought me to the conclusion that uh, there's a lot of applications of the data sciences in in the fields of renewable energy, specifically in terms of the how solar and other renewable energy sources work. So combining that with the new challenge of transitioning uh, to clean energy sources, I found the place where I fit in the best in terms of combining my previous experiences and my current new degree. So that brought me to this role that uh, was in itself kind of unique and kind of a niche of how it all comes together. So using new kind of tools to solve the latest problems in the energy sector, that's how um, my career path has been laid out so far.
Thank you guys for your response. Um, I guess, and Hannah, please feel free to jump in if you have any questions yourself.
I do, but I can let you go first if you'd like.
No, please go ahead. You go first.
Okay, awesome. So I guess from like an HR operation standpoint, I'd love to hear from each of you about where you found your current internship, like how you heard about the program or the position. And just like generally what about the posting like attracted you to it? Like what are you looking for in an internship? Like what kind of, is it like compensation? Is it like the mentorship? Is it a combination of all of it? What like really led you to like accept that position and look at internships that are like that. But yeah, I'd love to hear from all of you. Feel free to jump in. Thank you. And I can also call in someone. How about we do Jose, if you want to start?
Thank you. So regarding the platforms I used, I like to search for positions through LinkedIn. Also, we have a career development portal that that gets updated on a weekly basis. But my favorite part was LinkedIn. I could foresee the network, and the most important thing for me was a job description that fits perfectly to what I was looking for to develop professionally, what the trajectory of the company was doing, and how could I learn from that. So for example, in SBE, the team's performance, so it's a company that has no more than 10 years here in the US, and their projects are position SB Energy in one of the top companies for solar power generation, more than 3 gigawatts of power capacity, operating capacity right now, and it's a lot. Just to get into perspective, that's like 20% of Mexico's electric power demand, so it's big. And the fact that they focused on solar power, just in the past 10 years, solar power has decreased by 50%. So it's a technology that has been improving and will be will keep on improving throughout the year. So that was a big thing. Solar power generation, battery storage, also the ESS strategic partnership with that company really caught my eye. And the fact that they're integrating artificial intelligence to optimize profitability. Those three were the biggest, I would say, competitive advantages that I noticed and enabled me to look for a position here. And thankfully I got it, and it's been a great journey so far.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Jose. I'd love to hear from the other two as well, so feel free to jump in.
In my case, I got this opportunity through a reference. So the professor who I work under, basically who's my mentor in school, uh, he received this opportunity. So turns out his student from about 9 years ago is working here in the grid integration team. So at some point, he reached out to my professor saying that they are looking for interns, and then my professor basically sent in my name, through which I got in touch with Mr. Noel Augustine, who I'm reporting here, and that is how I got to know about this opportunity. Other than that, I had applied to a lot of ISOs and as well as IPPs, but yeah, this particular job I got through a reference.
That's great. We do a lot of like targeted outreach to, well, for this internship program, we did a lot of targeted outreach to like career development centers who pass on the opportunities to like the professors and the departments that are related to the most. So that's great to hear that you found yours through your professor.
And yeah, so to the point that Jose mentioned regarding finding what you wanted to do and how he found it through LinkedIn, for me personally, it was kind of hard to cut through all that noise, specifically on LinkedIn, because there's too many jobs being posted. Many of them are actually not jobs, they're just mostly ads for the companies, then there's no roles there. So cutting through all that noise and trying to find what you want to do was actually there was a bit of a learning curve to it for me. So my approach to it was actually just doing with the kind of keywords regarding the jobs that I was looking for. I just used search engines such as Google. So and I had alerts set up in terms of the kind of role that I was looking for. And that's actually how I found this current role for me. So like in the same category, I found a lot of roles. And I found that when I did that targeted search and then again targeted applications, I had a better response from those companies rather than going on LinkedIn and looking for it or any other portal that might have some job postings.
That's great. Yeah, I remember even when I was searching for my current position, I found that I was looking a lot on LinkedIn, but it wasn't really working for me. And I also had like I've done that like kind of a targeted outreach on LinkedIn. But I found my current position by signing up for emails with an organization called Climate Base, and they posted a lot of like internship and full-time positions within the clean energy space. And I found that to be really helpful. And that's actually how Climate Base was how I found my current position. So yeah, that's another Another tip that I'll throw out there is that job boards like Climate Base are out there. There's quite a few of them. If there's like a certain industry that you're looking to move into, and Climate Base was really helpful for me. So thank you all. I appreciate you answering those questions.
And then I have another question for the three of you. So jump in whenever. But I'm curious how this internship that you're currently in is helping you gain experience for your future career goals.
I can go first if you want. So all of my experience was based in Mexico's energy sector. And the electric power industry in Mexico is pretty similar to ERCOT's or CAISO independent system operation, but definitely also at the same time very different, especially with the power purchase agreements. So having the opportunity to read, analyze, go through in detail these power purchase agreements, which are probably the most significant contracts in the past 2 years. It's really invaluable experience, and I've enjoyed it so far, learning a lot about how the game is played here, what are the rules, what are the most important compliance obligations, and so forth. So it's helped a lot so far.
Thank you, Jose.
And for me, I would say the same thing because when you're in school, like in grad school, they don't teach you a lot about policy. Like at least at NYU, we don't have any specific courses that teach us about energy policy, energy markets, what goes on when it comes to paperwork when you're trying to build a solar plant. So that sort of a knowledge was absent for me in school. So I would say this internship has really given me exposure to that side of the industry, and I feel that is a quite invaluable resource because being in the renewable industry, you not only need the technical skills but you also need to have knowledge about all the agreements that go on and the paperwork and stuff. So yeah, I think that is one thing that I feel is a good learning experience from the internship.
And I would just like to add that, working in a growing company, in a growing industry is the best place to be. So that way, I feel like this internship is going to help a lot, given what I have planned for my career.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And another question that I thought about asking, but I hadn't yet, was something along the lines of like, how do you think this industry will change in the next 5 years? And I think there's a lot that we can project, but there's always going to be variables that we didn't consider before that'll have like long-lasting effects, I think, on the industry. So I think in all of these opportunities, being flexible and learning new skills is always going to help. So it'll be a really interesting experience to see how everyone's careers end up developing through these skills that you're learning now. So with all that being said, I just wanted to appreciate you guys so much for coming out to the Summer Intern Network this week, and giving kudos to Hannah for being our industry member who we were able to get an experience with. I definitely keep an eye out on the follow-up email. We're still working on who our next week's member will be, but as soon as I have those updates, I will send them out to you through email. And again, the link is no longer available on the website, so you will have to access it through the email. I apologize if that wasn't very clear before. We're just trying to mitigate any type of unwanted traffic through our calls. So that's why it's more through the email, and that way you have to sort of pre-register to it. But does anyone have any questions before we sign off for today?
No, all good. Thank you for your time, Olivia. Thank you for having us.
With regards to the meeting links, I'm not getting them consistently, so I would just like if you can send them to me again, or you know.
Sure, yeah. I'll try and make a note about sending out the link on the day of too. That way it's fresh in your email.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for being flexible with me. I'm still learning and growing through this experience, so I appreciate everyone's patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Oh.
Oh my goodness.